This is an important video. It's an important topic for YouTube and those of us who live off of YouTube. So The Verge recently filed a copyright claim against Bitwit Kyle, which turned into a strike temporarily. It also filed one against Review Tech USA and presumably other YouTubers for their parodies of The Verge's 4-month-old video on how to build a gaming PC. And most of us know how that went at this point. It did not go over well. The video was very bad if you missed out on that. So this video, it had its comments disabled before being ultimately removed from the site. It has been gone from the site for several months now. We've all pretty much forgotten about this thing, but it's a big aggression coming out of nowhere from a professional, highly respected news organization such as The Verge.
Hey YouTube, it's me, Nilay Patel, editor-in-chief of The Verge. We have a big team of tech reporters with a deep understanding of tech and how it affects the world we live in.
This is Sam Baker with The Verge, and this is the Inventor Solo Wheel, and I'm getting off right now.
I actually jump, and I can punch, and I'm just knocking buildings over.
Is sheer stupidity. There's just no content.
But they find a way to remind everybody that they exist, and that sign back there, that's another example of that.
This is so depressing.
We believe, and YouTube does too, evidently, that Kyle's video constituted fair use, specifically parody or satire, seeing as that's what it was. And YouTube did side with Kyle eventually, although when we started working on this, it had been undecided at that point, and YouTube reinstated his video. It also presented concerns to the Verge parent company Vox Media over potentially illegitimate claims filed in this instance. And media organizations have used the DMCA to get back at each other for criticisms in the past. It's actually, that's what I just said, that's a quote from The Verge. They wrote it in 2015, referencing the Sunday Times and a DMCA notice that was filed by it. And then The Verge went on to further state, quote, "It set off the Streisand effect at most and will probably go no further." The irony is tangible here. Before that, this video is brought to you by us and the new Gamers Nexus Media Mod Mat. This is a 32-inch by 16-inch anti-static PC building service meant to protect your desk and your components while building systems, delidding CPUs, modding GPUs, or working with liquid cooling components. The GPU teardown diagram shows common placement of MOSFETs, inductors, capacitors, BIOS chips, shunt resistors, and more, and is accompanied by PCIe wiring diagrams and screw grids for your convenience. Grab your GN Media Mod Mat GPU Teardown Edition on store.gamersnexus.net or click the link below. We see these actions by Vox Media as an egregious abuse of its position and power in the market. Although The Verge has a 30% reduction year over year in traffic volume, which is a sort of staggering loss in the amount of visitors its website is receiving, it is still unarguably a massive website. And this isn't just YouTube drama here. It's an important keystone weakness in YouTube's copyright claim system, and it's one that has affected us in the past. We have always successfully battled these claims when they're filed because they are, in every instance that we've battled thus far, invalid. And that's because, well, really, for the most part, almost anyone can file one. And although it has gotten better recently, you didn't always have to be in any sort of legitimate positioning to make that filing. So you could sort of temporarily withhold the advertising revenue from those YouTubers, from those content creators by filing such a claim. In this instance, though, it wasn't really that type of claim. It was a takedown. The video was gone, and Kyle had to go through YouTube to get it reinstated. So this is a wide-reaching thing. These are issues that we deal with, or at least think about, on a daily basis across all of the creators in the community. So even if the claims are illegitimate or short-lived and resolved, they are still problematic. It takes time from us. It takes money sometimes to fight, depending on how fiercely the other side wants to keep that claim in place. And this could be leveraged by manufacturers in much the same way that The Verge is attempting to leverage it to control damage that, well, really was just a parody of its own missteps from 4 months ago. And to that end, you know, a manufacturer could try to file a similar type of copyright claim. In fact, game developers and publishers have done this in the past. We've had those as well for negative or critical reviews, or reviews which they believe show their game in a light that is undesirable. So it is not a far leap to suggest that a component manufacturer could attempt to follow the same path if it so desired and were clueless enough and in an anencephalic state to do so. So this is something that The Verge even knows. It's well aware of this. The Verge and its staff presumably are self-aware to some extent. And one of the 2017 articles that The Verge published referred to this specific type of use, the one that they're doing now, of copyright claims on YouTube as a, quote, weaponization of copyright. Let's level here. All media organizations make mistakes. The world moves too fast. We publish too much content. It happens. And we make mistakes. I mean, just recently we published a video where we swapped Firestrike GT1 and GT2 footage in the content. Now, the thing is, how do you deal with those mistakes? Publishing a correction is difficult with YouTube, but can certainly be done. We have used Twitter as a source, for example, and comments and things like that. And retracting content is, of course, another option if it is severe enough to require a retraction. In the case of The Verge's PC building video, it determined eventually that the inaccuracies in the content were severe enough to retract the video, or in the very least, the response and the reputation damage were severe enough to retract the video. So what matters is how do you deal with those mistakes when you make them? And this is, again, something that all of us have to know how to deal with, even outside of media, of course, but especially in media, because it does sort of propagate in a way that is difficult to fix once that information gets out there if it's wrong. So on The Verge, there is a statement on the website. There are written guidelines by The Verge, by Vox Media, for what to do when there is some sort of incorrect information published. And that guideline states, quote, Vox Media makes every effort for content to be completely accurate upon publication. If a correction is required, however, we are transparent and will update a story if new information either adds to or corrects an aspect of the original story. We will issue corrections for a factual error or if a typo in the copy could cause audiences to misunderstand the story. In this instance, The Verge disabled its YouTube comments. It took down its own video and updated its article with a sort of weak defense of the content and brushed a bunch of things under the rug. So this is the very opposite of what we would consider to be, transparent, as the Verge and its guidelines do suggest it tries to be. It's not quite transparent, other than, well, I guess transparent in so far as transparent in its efforts to try and hide the accidents of the past and prevent further embarrassment to itself. But rather than follow its own written guideline, what happened here is Vox Media made, and The Verge, every single bad play in the playbook that they could make, ensuring that nobody will ever forget this video. I mean, we have references to it on one of our disappointment shirt, on the 2018 disappointment build shirt. For instance, it's there forever. So if you have one, you've got a piece of history. Maybe they'll send you a copyright claim. In our research on illegitimate claims here, because The Verge is sort of resurfacing this content now, in our research on legitimate claims, which even YouTube questioned in its response to Vox Media, we found a 2017 article that states the following of some of Firewatch's own copyright claims made on YouTube. Quote, if the studio knew it was fair use, it could even be punished for filing a false report. The source of that article was The Verge, by the way, you might have guessed by now. The company also wrote an article in 2016 that was entitled, quote, A Fine Mess, How Not to Assert Your Copyright in the YouTube Age, wherein it encouraged the Fine brothers for releasing illegitimate content ID claims on YouTube as a means to, quote, purge the evil from their public image and start afresh. In that same piece, The Verge wrote that the Fine brothers' overreach of trademark and copyright protectionism could, direct quote here, have led to a real suppression of creativity on YouTube and also set a horrible precedent for any related genres of user-generated videos. So this is The Verge. These are quotes from them. We looked up about 10 years of their articles, and they made a lot of ad money from us too, because I didn't disable their ads, so you're welcome, The Verge. But we looked up a lot of their articles here, and this is a consistent theme. The Verge and its authors do regularly make these statements about how this type of abuse of copyright is a bad thing. I'm paraphrasing there, but you get the idea. I mean, I just read you a quote a second ago, so pretty clear what that author of The Verge thought anyway. So it does seem that The Verge knew the precedent that its actions could set. specifically when speaking of the Fine Brothers and previously of other content. So this is an abuse of the same system to file illegitimate claims as The Verge was potentially, well, actually was directly criticizing in that previous article. And The Verge reinforces itself too. In its 2016 report, The Verge, no surprise, noted that Google had been inundated with over 75 million copyright takedowns in February of 2016 alone. Many of these were legitimate, to be completely fair to the content. However, as the author wrote, quote, the ballooning number of requests shows that copyright holders are still very eager to leverage the DMCA at every opportunity. And this was also, speaking of music at the time, movies, things like that, but did briefly mention the other type of request here that we're discussing today. So the trouble is that there are functionally no repercussions for a company which follows the actions that Vox Media did today. It is a company trying to bully content creators into removal of their content. This is already something we deal with, where companies try to force us to modify our content. We, of course, do not stand for that, but it is something that happens behind closed doors, and certainly some content you've seen somewhere has been at least partially influenced or modified at the request of a company. So taking down a video can remove it entirely from the site in the worst case. Actually, in a worse case than that, the content creator receives a copyright strike, as Kyle briefly did. You get a couple of those, about 3, before you are functionally banned from the platform and eliminated, with your means of making a living gone in the blink of an eye. And this is a system which is still somewhat automated. There was manual oversight in the case of Kyle's issue, where he did bring it to YouTube's attention, but this is it's a serious concern. I mean, just think about going to sleep every night with the realization that you could wake up and you've got copyright strikes that have shut down your channel until you can get it resolved. And in the worst case, you might not be able to get it resolved. You can reference the channel I Hate Everything, where his channel was effectively gone overnight, although it was eventually, I believe, resolved. But that didn't really help things for the prolonged period of time in which it was gone, along with all income. So it's a problem. And really what we're looking at here is, let's look at this. There's a pivotal case in 2015 on fair use, which is the issue we're talking about today. The judge took the side of fair use and wrote that, quote, fair use is not just excused by the law, it is wholly authorized by the law. This is the famous dancing baby case, if you're familiar with that, from a couple years ago. So in its analysis of this decision, The Verge wrote in 2015 the following, quote, the decision chips away at the perception that any use of copyrighted material is probably illegal, setting a higher bar for the copyright holders. And further, The Verge wrote that, quote, in order to file a takedown notice, copyright holders must have a good faith belief that someone is using their work illegally, but because the bar for getting content removed is fairly low, and there are rarely repercussions for filing obviously incorrect complaints, the system is open to abuse. So The Verge won't have any meaningful repercussions here for its actions. YouTube will likely not act against The Verge. As we're aware, YouTube does not, in any common case, take away the powers of these copyright holders, which is all of us, really. But to our knowledge, YouTube doesn't take away those powers to file those copyright claims. And maybe in a mid-step instance, YouTube could have some sort of dulling of those powers. I mean, if a company like, in this instance, Vox Media, to our belief, is abusing the ability to file copyright claims which lead to strikes, and it does so repeatedly and has a history of doing so, and has a history of losing when YouTube ultimately reviews the issue and reverses the removal of the video, then perhaps YouTube could at least consider making those filing, the copyright complaints, not instantly disable the video. Just maybe pitch it to the creator first. Let them respond. Give them 48 hours, and then remove the video if the company that has filed the claim has a history of abusing the system, short of just completely taking away the powers, although that does seem a bit extreme because there are valid uses there too, even if they abuse it normally. So YouTube's probably not going to act against The Verge in any way here. We'll see, of course. This is opinion. This whole content piece is to be viewed as opinion or satire in some instances, And these quotes of the content from The Verge are not the heart of the content. They are quotes which have been attributed. And if you would like links to them, we can provide some of those as well. We'll do that below, I suppose. So if you're watching The Verge and Vox Media, hello, it's fair use. So deal with it. But otherwise, this is, it's something that concerned us. And to be real here, The Verge, for all of the silliness in that video, really, it did not deserve an eternity of being criticized for that video. We kind of all got it out of our systems in the first couple of weeks there, and everyone moved on. There's the occasional reference to tweezers instead of zip ties, but at this point, they're so far removed from that reference that it's just kind of a funny joke in the community. And now, the Streisand effect, as The Verge so pointedly highlighted, is in full effect, because we are all reminded of this content once again, and it's for the wrong reasons. It's out of this weird, you just sort of feel bad for Vox Media. It's the company or whoever's over there controlling this is so embarrassed of this content that it waited several months. Someone over there stewed over this content and how it's embarrassing them, or how they perceive it's embarrassing them, for months before acting on anything, hoping that probably no one would notice. The opposite, in fact, is true. We never made a video entirely dedicated to the Verge PC when it first happened. And here we are now, talking about the actually serious legal issues that are being brought to the forefront because of the follow-on effect of Vox Media trying to remove Kyle's content and Review Tech USA's content and who knows who else, because they thought it made them look stupid. And The Verge, you alone were responsible for looking stupid.
Is sheer stupidity.
You can't really blame the other guys for pulling bits and pieces of the video, showing it, and then making fun of it, commentating on it through satire, through whatever. Shows like, well, comedy shows that make fun of other networks, of other programs, of movies, of books, of TV, they wouldn't exist if they had the same sort of issue we're dealing with here on YouTube, because they're protected under fair use, as we are on YouTube now because of that 2015 ruling. So anyway, it's a bit different. We don't want this to appear like some sort of YouTube drama video of any kind. That's why I didn't really go too hard with knocking The Verge in this one, instead using their own quotes to highlight the inanity of it all, because I think, honestly, The Verge, through its points and counterpoint here that we've laid out on its behalf, does a good job of telling the story, and I don't think we need to comment a whole lot more. So anyway, hopefully this brought some attention of the matter to you. It is, I believe, resolved. Kyle seems to be in fine shape now. It looks like YouTube has heard his side of it and heard the viewership on Twitter. So we thank you for your support of the community. Of course, this affected Kyle directly, but it affects all of us indirectly. It is a concern of all of ours that you can receive this type of action illegitimately from companies that just don't like you. And it can shut things down, or in the very least, it can remove and censor content for the period of time in which the content is relevant. You might not get it back up in time for people to care anymore. It can just disappear. So that's ultimately the concern. And I don't think this is the last you'll hear about this type of issue. So subscribe for more, as always. We'll have some actually good content like benchmarking coming up soon. I apologize if this is not the type of content you like from us. I don't particularly like making it, but I do find it very important. And this is my livelihood. This is my team's livelihood. We deeply care about what happens on YouTube as a platform. We deeply care about the politics of YouTube as a platform. And we deeply care about the legal matters of YouTube and how it affects our peers in the space, because it will too affect us at a later date. So this is greatly important to us, and I know it's not benchmark content, but I appreciate you hearing me out, because I pay people based on YouTube. I pay myself based on YouTube, and we can't do this without YouTube as a platform, but to also live in sort of a fear of what could happen if the systems of YouTube are abused and leveraged against you in a way that you can't respond quickly enough, that's obviously concerning. So Anyway, that's it for now. Let's get back to the real content. Thanks for watching. You can support us through the normal means, patreon.com/gamersnexus. Go subscribe to Kyle or tweet at him or something and give him some kind words. And I'll see you all next time.
Swiss Army knife, which hopefully has a Phillips head screwdriver in it, hopefully has a Phillips head screwdriver in it,